Much as I love
Probably a whole bunch of people watching.
I'm surprised there's not people here for the food court. I thought there'd be some people here for that one.
Video unavailable.
Go to the Zoom. We might be on actually. Zoom, yeah.
Okay, well,
I said live.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good. Yep.
I'm just- Oops. That's it, they got it. Got it, right. No,
You're gonna have to share your screen too, right? Or share your screen on,
On
Zoom.
Zoom.
so that it's shown on YouTube as well.
yeah, right there.
Wow, thank you, IT. Nice job.
Okay.
We're good.
I think so.
All right, we're gonna call to order the City of Sherwood Planning Commission meeting for August 8th, 2023. We need a roll call. No, all right, we're here or we're not. We're gonna go. I guess we have a counselor. I think we have a report from the council.
Nothing in addition to what we're gonna talk about tonight.
Okay.
So we'll be back for the food cards,
Okay, and that's,
being a work session.
that'll be great for your input there, so, but nothing new and exciting.
The new, no, not previous.
Okay, then we'll move right into climate friendly and equitable communities. CFAC is our first topic.
Excellent. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Joy Chang and I'm the senior planner in our planning group. So, and tonight I'm talking about the climate friendly and equitable communities. Maybe. Next. Oh, geez. All right, so also. Yeah, I tried it and it wasn't moving. Okay, anyway, climate friendly and equitable communities, also, we use the acronym CFAC. Rules were developed by former Governor Kate Brown, where she issued an executive order in March of 2020 that tightened Oregon's carbon emission goals and directed state agencies to take action to speed up the pace of emission reduction. LCDC adopted land use, building and transportation planning rules for jurisdictions and in Oregon's metropolitan areas in July of 2022. And one of the key things is that the city of Sherwood and 12 other jurisdictions, including Tualatin, Hillsborough, Happy Valley, and Oregon City, eventually sued over the new rules. And the case is currently in the Oregon Court of Appeals. At issue is whether the LCDC exercised authority it did not have when codifying and mandating the rules. So why are we implementing now since we're still in litigation? That's one of the questions that was raised. And basically we appealed and asked for a stay through the Circuit Court of Appeals, and our stay was denied. The court didn't weigh in on the merits of the case at all. It simply found that irreparable harm has not been shown, basically stating that the harms were not immediate and all cities would continue to function. So meaning the regulations continue as far as our enforcement or application. There you go. So again, CFAC rules take in effect incrementally, and we'll talk about that momentarily. There are some required implementation this year. EV conduits are required, so we can implement these even though they're not codified because they're clear and objective standards. And I'll talk to you more about that
So I
in
just want to
detail.
be clear,
Yeah.
we as a city are suing LCDC and the state saying that we don't agree that they have implemented legal rules. And we are now saying that because they're clear and objective, we're going to go ahead and apply them.
What we're saying is that the ones that are clear and objective that were mandated to be in effect at a certain threshold, we have to implement. And then we did, some of the following slides will show that we did requests for parking reform B, an extension for a whole year for us to do a code audit and things like that, so that we can properly implement it. But the direction we've received from our city council is that we cannot do anything. Because our deadline for not doing anything was July or June 30th of this year. And if we didn't do anything as far as requests for the extension or not implement, the mandate is that we wouldn't be allowed to require parking anywhere in the city.
Yeah, so the lawsuit it's active, but the law is still in effect. So until we win or lose, until we win the lawsuit, if we do win the lawsuit, then
These are the.
we can do away with all of this, but while the lawsuit is still in effect, still active, we have to implement the rule. We have to act like basically there's no lawsuit. All of the law applies and we have to implement it. And so that's what we're doing.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the law. I mean, basically that's the status of the law right now. It is legal. It's law. It's legal. Even though there's an appeal going on, it's still in effect. And so what Joey was just saying is there's provisions within the law that says if we don't choose our own path in terms of A, B, or all these options, then the law chooses for us. And so we're saying, all right, we still don't like this, but we are going to choose our own destiny within this law while the lawsuit's being worked out.
So that language that was articulated there, I think it needs to be the first paragraph of every public outreach, because that messaging needs to be clear to the citizens that we are not implementing these items because we just want to implement a rule, that if we fail to implement something, the consequences of that action are that we can't enforce any parking regulations. And this is the best approach we have to continue to control what part of our destiny we can.
That's right.
And
Yes, so I do want to say that even though this is somewhat the first time you guys are seeing it, we did talk to city council in regards to the direction, in regards to, there was all these different options that we'll be discussing, so that we got their guidance in regards to how should we proceed because of the timing.
right, I think when we get ready to go to hearing and when we do some more public outreach, some people are so embedded in it, they assume that everybody understands, and there's
Right.
a lot of step back and give
Yes,
context to citizens.
right. Yes,
I'm sorry, that's getting the weeds, but because I get clear and objective, so you're not gonna put it in the code now until the outcome of the lawsuit. How are we, is it just every development will be check sheeted?
yes, yep. Every application that would be impacted, we're gonna be treating it differently, that aspect of it.
And then,
And then some form of if and when, because one of the key things is for us to do a code audit and make changes. But the request has been having some type of a sunset clause. If we win, these are not in effect, they kind of go away.
that was gonna be my next thing, was the conversation of having a sunset clause.
Yeah.
That if we win, then these all expire.
Right, so again, okay, so this year, EV conduits, and then 2 parking reforms, A and B, we'll be discussing shortly. And then in the future, we have designating climate-friendly areas, transportation performance standards, the transportation TSP update requirements, Again, rules provide options for local jurisdictions to request alternative implementation timeline for certain elements. So, which we did ask, so let's talk about that. So again, phase one, parking reform A, in your packet is like the light purple, reducing parking mandates that took effect December 31st of 2022. And then phase two that took effect June 30th. And again, agencies can request extension, and I want to let you know, we did request it and we did get approved for 1 year extension in regards to parking reform B. So DLCD granted this that.
I do want to say that we had asked DLCD if we could extend it until a lawsuit was over. And unfortunately, they would only extend it for every jurisdiction within Oregon for a year
And what's,
across the board to make it fair and even.
what's the, expected timeline for the lawsuit?
We don't have a status on that.
Yeah, we hope it gets resolved by the end of this year. There's a chance though that even if it does, we get appealed again to the Oregon Supreme Court, so it's.
Is the plaintiff League of Oregon Cities or is it individual cities?
It's the individual cities and counties.
Yeah.
Can we ask for a second extension or continual extensions, or is it just a one and only?
Well, we requested a one and only, and just because we also had to provide a scope of timing on what is expected within that year, you know, like the code audit, our public engagement, the hearings process. So I don't know, we kind of we built in a timeline so that we can meet the expectations of the year.
And to be honest, I don't know if they would grant another exception to allow more time.
But the door may not be closed, it's just,
Yeah, but I don't know of any other cities asking for it. And then we're a little special just because we're in litigation too. So, yeah, who knows? But at the same time, I think if we do, I would hope that if we're making a good faith effort in pushing through, but we're somehow delayed due to something major. Not a COVID epidemic, but some, you know, maybe that, knock on wood, you know, maybe they'll reconsider, but we have not. So let's just talk about the electric vehicle charging. So, all new multifamily residential buildings with 5 or more units. So that's the key, is 5 or more units. They need to provide electrical service capacity for 40% of their parking spaces. Capacity just means installing the conduits, the pipes to serve the 40% parking spots, ready for additional wiring, charging stations to support EV at as the market expands. So EV infrastructure for housing development of 4 or fewer or other development types aren't required. So it's very specific to 5 or more. So apartment, multifamily. So the only one that I can think of that would be coming is you guys recently heard the zone change for Sherwood Plaza. We changed that from a retail commercial to high density residential, and the ultimate goal for them is apartments. So that's the only development that at this time that I can see that they would have to apply this. I don't know of any other multifamily at this time, as far as we haven't had any pre-apps for any additional.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
How many of the actual charging stations are they going to have to provide if it's only the conduits for the 40%?
it's just the conduits.
So
That's, I mean,
we have,
right, they just have to have, build the capacity, but it would benefit the development to actually have at least 1 or 2, just because, you know, but at least the wiring is available.
Vastly cheaper than trying to retrofit.
Yes, yeah,
It doesn't add a lot really to it.
yeah, it's really smart planning, whoever's developing, that they just do that, just because it's the requirement at this time. So let's talk about parking reform A, right? Again, all applications submitted on or after December 31st are subject to these. So these are the ones that we haven't updated the community development code, but we're applying it through the state rules directly. So we can't require more than one parking space per unit for residential developments. That's clear and objective, one unit per one parking per one unit. So right now, the way our code is written is that for like multifamily, is based on how many numbers of bedrooms. Like one bedroom is one parking space, 1.5, you know, and so on, requires so many parking spaces. But now one unit, it doesn't matter how many bedrooms, only requires one parking space.
On street or off street?
Off street, on site.
The
Yeah,
garage counts now. That's another one, right?
yes,
Is that A or B?
that's actually A. I mean, no, the garage thing is B. So, but we have to change our code because right now the way that our code stands is that we don't count parking garages as parking spaces. But we can count driveways as parking spaces. So it's a little different once we implement this.
So that the codification that we're doing right now is only to be A.
Right, and it's not really, we're not even codifying it, we're just implementing it straight out of state law. But when we do the full audit, it'll fix all of that and capture all of this.
That process is going to be 1 year with
Right,
completion date prior to June 30.
correct, yep. The other is that we can't require any parking for small types of developments like small units smaller than 750 feet, affordable units, which we really don't regulate, childcare facilities for people with disabilities and shelters. So again, the current code doesn't require parking for ADUs, which I would consider those small units, boarding houses, daycares, and nursing homes, and staff's considering these types of similar uses to be specialized facilities and shelters. So they all fit under that, and we don't currently require parking requirements for those types. So yeah, we're already in compliance with that.
So what about,
No, seriously, it's a big win.
so how does that impact our cottage clusters?
Well, smaller than 750, our cottage cluster, the footprint is about 950. So it's gonna be bigger, so it doesn't
That's
apply,
the maximum.
Yeah, that's the max. So-
right? But typically they would build it up to the maximum. Unless if they want a smaller cottage that's smaller than 750.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I
Square feet.
mean, I don't know if they would or not, it's just an assumption.
Yeah, I think it'd be if it's under 750, if the cottage cluster unit is under 750, no parking's required. If it's between 750 and 950, one stall.
All right,
And then, so just facilities for people with disabilities, I'm just trying to figure out.
it could, yeah, I don't know how,
We're not gonna let people who are disabled have parking spaces, is. I mean,
the state law doesn't require us to, but it doesn't mean, okay, so one of the key things, the takeaway in regards to all these parking mandates is that just because we don't require it, doesn't mean that the developer isn't gonna propose it. Because, you know, it wouldn't benefit them if they didn't have any parking, so you especially, let's just prime example for an apartment complex, even though we require only one unit one parking per one unit, it doesn't mean that they're not going to provide more so that their
Can get their
Guests.
in.
their
Yeah.
guests can actually have a place to park, or, you know, and typically a one unit may have two cars. I mean, the developer again can provide more.
but they don't, they provide less. So we have in our code a requirement for guest parking for 15%. Does that mean that has to be removed from the code?
Most likely, yeah, and that's gonna be part of the code audit. Yeah, most likely,
Yeah.
because we can't require more.
We'll stall per unit.
Yeah, we can't require more.
What about if there's a community center? I'm going down a rabbit hole. I'm just.
Yeah,
People that are in the apartments right next door park, I see them when I get here early. They fill that whole row on the at the edge of the city hall parking lot. And they probably have one unit per. One parking spot per unit, and that's not enough.
all right. So one of the other things that, I didn't capture the first time. Just because one of the requirements was parking is not required along transit corridors that are considered frequent service routes, right? So TriMet has a definition of what a frequent transit, yeah, what a frequent transit route.
And just to defend Joy, that's, I mean, we looked at this thing, I think we all looked at it and said,
I believe it.
and per our. I think it's actually Metro code, just to give you a little support, there's Metro code that defines frequent service, and so we're looking at that, and I think it's once every 20 minutes. That was at least what it was when I was looking at the code, and so we're like, well, we're about.
We don't qualify.
The schedule is once every 30 minutes or so for us, so we thought it didn't apply, but go ahead, Joy.
Yeah, so I was under this assumption that based on frequent service, as far as TriMet's definition, we were not required to do this reform, this very specific one. Well, DLCD has a different definition of frequent service. So now TriMet line 94 qualifies as a frequent transit service. So here's a map that you guys also got in your packet, and basically everything around the black circle is the half-mile threshold on each side of 94. The good thing is we did our buildable land inventory over it. And really, there's only two big parcels that can potentially develop that would be impacted significantly. And the top one there by Pacific Highway, that's that Sherwood Plaza that you guys just did the zone change. That's going to be apartments. And then the southern one is currently vacant and is owned by St. Francis. So you guys would pass it if you guys go down Langer. It's the one with all the crosses at certain times of month or seasonal. But anyway, so those are the only two. And then the others are really tiny and or they're buffering some wetlands that you can't really, I can't see us truly developing. So the impact is minimal in regards to this. But again, any redevelopment along this buffer, half a mile from 94, we can't require any parking.
Can we revisit that because
Get that.
Oh.
Try again.
so the cul-de-sac that I live in to get to the bus stop. Because the cul-de-sac requires me to go out, over, up, around. It is a mile to Old Town. Even though I'm within that. Because if it's a walkable half mile.
Right.
All the area, the cul-de-sacs and the areas in past the fire station. I would be surprised if you couldn't get there in a half mile because of the backtrack.
Yeah, and I think we have a couple of options on how we measure walkable versus linear. And I think it was just easier for us to just do the whole circumference.
It's gonna be difficult for us to do
Walkable.
that analysis, and it's a pretty heavy GIS analysis. So
Yeah,
we
and
can-
maybe not worth it if it's there, but
Yeah, we can consider it, but it's pretty
I just didn't know. if it would be-
involved.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is there's not many buildable lands that are impacted as far as future development.
Okay.
Which is great because many cities and counties, that's why a lot of them have did the mandate of no parking. All the buses, pretty much the whole city was impacted where they couldn't require any parking. So why try to piecemeal it as far as the regulations?
Can we define a transit corridor?
Nope.
We would
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
I mean-
DLCD has done that for us.
Yeah, and they define frequent service too.
What is DLC? Would they define transit corridor as?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, I have,
I don't have the
I
definition.
have to look that
So
up.
parking is not required along a transit corridor, right? So
Mhm. That's within half a mile
Mile.
of a frequent service route.
So transit corridors is where where the bus goes.
Yeah. And typically, I was also thinking
The
transit corridor like West, Max,
Yeah.
you know, those are big transit, those are definitely frequent. And I also even said, well, we have another line that's not 94, but it's 97.
Yes.
And I go, are you guys counting this also? Because it had it where, you know, it runs in the morning and it runs in the afternoon. And I don't know if they were merciful to us. It's like, oh, you can just count 94 as that.
So what happens if TriMet changes their
I'm,
frequency?
well, that's just it. TriMet's frequency is what is invalid. The frequent service definition is by OAR, which is above and beyond. And I did argue with the planner. I go, I really wish you guys considered the local jurisdictions' frequent service maps when considering frequent service versus defining it yourself.
Sounds a little like home rule to me.
Right, and basically they said, point noted.
But yeah,
Right, we can get into it after we need to. Did they give like a headway, like minute? Is it every 30 minutes? Is it every?
Yeah, they did, but
it doesn't
full
run the
day.
full day.
I think to Gene's point, the only property that would be questionable would be the St. Francis property. You'd have to walk out and around and get into Old Town. That may be beyond that. So from a GIS analysis standpoint, that one property at all, the only one that really, because the other big piece of property is right on a stop, so.
Yeah, we can look at it a little bit closer. I think at a minimum, we'll want to provide feedback and just how this is not really working, how it actually plays out, you know, in these suburban communities. Yeah.
Is 94 more frequent in Tigard and then it comes down here? It seems like it was, anyway, it's not. I mean, they're gonna.
Okay, let's move on.
No, we're keeping here to midnight.
Oh, you're the second person that said that. All right, thanks. It's like, no. Okay, parking reform B, again, this was the 1-year extension that we requested, and it was requested and approved, and it's now effective June 30th. So the regulations, parking regulation improvements, preferable placement of carpool, van pool parking, allow redevelopment of any portion of a parking lot for bike and transit uses, allow and encourage redevelopment of undersized parking and other uses, allow and facilitate shared parking, new parking lots more than a half an acre in size must install 40% tree canopy or solar panels or solar wind, fee in lieu, or green energy. And then also adopting parking maximums in locations such as downtowns, regional or community centers, and transit-oriented development. So that's the things we're going to be looking at as far as part of the code audit. And then reducing the parking burden. Here we go, Jane. Garage and carports may not be required for residential developments. Garage and parking spaces shall not count towards off-street parking mandates. Provisions of shared parking shall be allowed to meet parking.
Shall count.
Shall, okay. And required parking may be provided off-site within 2,000 feet for pedestrian travel of a site, and reduce parking mandates if providing solar panels or wind power capacity, car sharing parking space, EV parking space units that are fully accessible to people with mobility and disability. So again, that's going to be something we're going to be looking at our code in regards to updating. Yeah, so that's the whole year, and we're going to spend a couple of months looking at code amendments. Yeah. So the other part of, it just continues on, you guys. Part of the parking reform B is that we had to choose 3 different options as far as the city. Option 1, many cities have already done this, Portland and Beaverton for sure, and Tigard. They repealed all parking mandates. That's option 1. Option 2 is fair pricing, and we'll talk more about that. And option 3 is reducing regulations, in addition to the ones you just read about, or we just discussed at the last slide. There's more. So the good thing is council, on June 6th, City Council, during their work session, council directed staff to pursue option 2, fair pricing. So let's get into it here. So it was like a cafeteria in regards to, you have to at least choose 2 of the 5 options. But one of them, it has to be within A, B, or C. So they basically chose B. Every parking space serving leased commercial developments be unbundled parking. And I gave you guys the guideline on what unbundled parking is. And then the second option that council directed was tax on the revenue for commercial parking lots collecting no less than 10% of income, with revenues dedicated to improving transportation alternatives to drive alone travel. And so Eric could probably share with you as far as the direction on why it is that they chose this, but one of the key aspects is that these 2 choices are the least impact to our community development code.
I think that's right. I think for both of these, it was at least while the lawsuit's being settled, how can we improve the
Comply.
process with the least amount of change to our current code and current system. And that's why these 2 were chosen. So the unbundling, it's not the unbundling of commercial developments. We would probably implement that through a condition of approval. If we do get an application for new commercial development, we would say, and all this still applies, we would say, applicant developer shall unbundle parking as part of the leases. And DLCD staff did actually weigh in on this, and they don't expect us to be enforcing this. It's once the condition is issued, it's kind of up to us to whether or not we enforce that. So it's a way to require it, but with minimal involvement from the city for that first one.
So we're not going to go back to any existing development.
We don't have to, no.
Okay.
And then D, that pertains to like parking for a fee, which we don't have, downtown Portland, pay to park. We don't have any of those in the city right now, and so.
Low hanging fruit.
Right, but we're gonna have to create a program like a tax revenue as far as our finance department will have to generate. We'll have to create a program so that if and when that does happen, we have it in place and we're in compliance. And Eric, Jean, I'm not quite sure if we don't actually have to retrofit as far as commercial lease developments. I have to really read the ordinance in regards to that, because I keep on reading that if and when a new lease happens, bundling has to happen too.
Wow.
So
That outreach, the outreach needs to go to every single commercial business in the city of Sherwood. So that they can.
So if Beaverton and Tigard chose to repeal all, and we're saying that we're just unbundling and you're gonna pay your fair share of parking.
What?
They're gonna say, well, we're gonna affect potential tech industries coming in for Sherwood West and things like that in the future. Like, do we lose? Is there potential to lose out on some of these larger corporate commercial?
It'll be the same set of rules though, wherever they go in the metro area for the most part. We might be the most flexible.
Right, but I mean, if Beaverton, for example, and Tigard said, we're repealing all parking limits.
Requirements. So that's what they're doing, no parking requirements.
So,
So they're gonna put in the parking that's good they need for their employees,
Employees.
and
yeah, I agree. I think that's,
I mean, are you asking if were more of a burden because other jurisdictions.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
we're disincentivizing potentially,
Right.
but we're also, you know,
With the
it's necessary. We're having more local,
mandates.
local oversight on those things too.
Right, so,
And it won't affect our development code. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I'll look at the city councilor.
Do not just, so you unbundle, but then businesses can say, it's not part of your lease, but if you want to park there, I'll charge you $250.
right, and they can reduce their lease to 100
That's all.
to make sure that
Could be good.
it ultimately balances out.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah,
But we can't include it in there. Like,
it has to be a separate,
Yeah.
it's just like when you buy a condo and you have to buy the 2 parking spaces or however many parking spaces you want with that condo, that's unbundling.
Didn't I read that there has to be a fair and reasonable rate done as well?
Yeah,
So could you then, say 2, but then knock off 250 on the lease? Would that be fair? I mean, to me, I was just amazed with the amount of, it's like everyone lives and works in downtown Portland. Is how it comes across, and then just the minutia they were coming across with all that stuff was crazy for us.
And then that's, I think you nailed it. That's why there's part of the reason why there's litigation as well. It's the one size fits all. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just.
A little bit of overreach there.
all right, I think I only have a couple more slides, which is excellent. So, why am I here tonight? So you guys are really important, because, one of the first question is, should the planning commission be the citizen advisory committee for these bills? Is the question I have for you guys, just because it is a year out project, even though a lot of the regulations are, coming down from the state. It just seems as if there's work that can be done as a citizens advisory committee. But also some type of engagement, which is the second question, should we be doing? And one of the things definitely is, I think we need to provide a lot of information to the public on how we got here. And it's more informative versus, hey, we're creating these out of the blue kind of thing.
How much more work on staff is it if the planning commission isn't the CAC and we give that out to citizens, and then you have to have a TAC to go along with that at the same time, or
I don't think the work itself is significant enough to require a TAC, but basically a citizen advisory committee, you guys are acting as that would meet our public engagement aspect of why we requested.
So for
the
example,
extension.
during the residential design standards update and the housing choices update. the
You
planning
guys-
Commission acted as our community advisory committee, and we felt that was the most appropriate. Just because you had the wealth of knowledge already on what we were working on, and it wasn't gonna take as much time to educate a CAC as to why they were there. What we needed out of them for this project, so.
I think it makes sense if it's coupled with a good community engagement strategy, looking for support to speak for, as, necessarily not getting that involvement, so.
Yeah, I think, point well taken. We don't just want to check a box with you guys, we want to get the information, actually get the information out there as well. Yep.
Right. Serious community engagement and or inviting the planning commission and a group of citizens to form the CAC so that there would be. I had thought getting, someone from the high school on, getting someone from the senior center, someone from the library. Getting a commercial land owner and a realtor. Someone from Old Town, the bike ped community. I mean. I thought about it and then I also talked to Commissioner Bands or Balsa. Anyway. I was on vacation. We're already being dictated to at the minutia from the LCD. So what really is the citizen advisory committee's opportunity to affect change? We're really just
They can only vent to us, I mean, or to the city, which none of us have any jurisdiction to do anything other than what's been mandated.
So I think my first comment was, yeah, we should get other citizens involved because if it's always just the planning commission. But we need the planning commission to be up to speed so that we can hit the ground running. We have a year and do it. But then after talking to Dan, it's like, we just don't have too many, there's not a lot of wiggle room. It's not like we're creating something from nothing. And so I think more importantly is the community outreach through the process.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay.
That's my opinion. I don't.
No, I agree, that's lots of community engagement and education.
And then kind of similar to the residential design standards work that we did this informative, like, open house, like, here's the draft, code, and this is like why we are doing it. And it was a lot of information on House Bill 2001 and the whys.
Yeah, I mean, I can see us definitely building a webpage for it,
Mhm.
just with all that information. Doing an open house and doing all of the social media outreach just to get as many people. Writing Archer articles,
Letters to the business community.
yeah.
Yeah, but. It's in the court system right now, so it's not that we can affect change. Except if we went to the legislator and said, to our legislation and said, an executive order. Is something that the legislation can take up as an item, can it not, and vote it out at some level? I mean, what does our legislature do if they don't do that? That has to be, I mean, it can't be just the city of Sherwood, it'd have to be a rallying cry from
League of Oregon Cities.
the League of Oregon City and, well, our 12 other partners that are doing this. And collaboration with the builder, the Home Builders Association is a big one. If they're not on board, fighting an uphill battle, but.
But the only real wiggle room, if I understand, that we have, city council's already said, we're taking that away, said we're only focusing on this. So as the elected officials of the citizens of Sherwood, I feel like, the direction's been given and we just need to,
Dot our i's, cross our t's, and reach out to the community so that when it comes to public hearing, they know why.
That they're informed.
And hope we went on a deal with the sunset clause.
I think you guys can serve a really important role in the code update, right? Is even though you don't have a lot of choices in the substance, I guess, exactly how it gets worded and catching maybe other things within the code that are incompatible or need to be updated at the same time. You guys can really get into the weeds on the code, even though not a lot of
Code updates.
Can we do the fence at the same time?
So we,
Oh.
No,
but I think that would be the rule, obviously, it's one stall per unit, but I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of not wiggle room, but just making sure that the actual update goes well, it's in the right section. If there's other stuff that we need to update at the same time, that would be your guys' role, to actually advise and see through the code update.
Have we checked with like Hillsborough and others, what their outreach is, if they are connecting with like a Better Business Bureau kind of thing, if they're.
I'll definitely do that, just to make sure that all the avenues that we can take, we're taking. Just because we want to make sure that those that are impacted are knowledgeable in regards to what's happening.
Mhm.
And how we're proceeding in regards to the mandate. So I heard yes to you guys, yes,
Mhm.
and then reward,
So the
so.
menu.
Right, so next steps are code audit, we're gonna do for the next couple of months.
Mhm.
We're gonna create a public engagement plan, so that you guys can bless as the CAC. We're gonna then prepare, once all that process is done, we're gonna prepare ordinances for the parking Form B, and then, of course, we're gonna keep track of the regulatory requirements and implementation timeframes, because it seems like sometimes they do updates and changes. And then, of course, the most important one is monitor the litigation that's happening. And that's all that I have for you guys tonight in regards to CFAC. Other questions?
We'll just clarify Gene's comment about the legislator. So my understanding is that the governor, this is just, I believe it's true, but the governor did this CFAC, through executive order. After, it wasn't this legislative session, but the last one, there was, the walkout. Basically, I think the legislator was going to do some type of action on climate. And it didn't happen for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons it didn't happen. And so that's when the governor did the executive order. So I think, and that's part of the lawsuit as well, is, we have a strong preference for the legislator actually doing this through a state law instead of an executive order. So I think that's how it should happen. And I think we're still kind of waiting for that. But it hasn't happened yet. But I don't think that's out of the picture. I don't think I think it could happen at some point in the future, and that could potentially supersede this executive order.
When we do this, a couple of ideas that came up were like a park and ride, if they're developing a number of units. Then require a park and ride related to it, because now we're forming a transit friendly community. With a park and ride lot.
Yep.
Near any larger housing developments that don't have.
I mean. That. You might wanna say, I don't know. I don't know that developers in a community like this are going to just start taking the option and I'm not gonna build a parking.
Right.
So but if you say you could have a park and ride lot, they might wanna dump all their parking there versus building up with the unit.
Yeah,
And I would hate to just see the asphalt
I was just trying to figure,
empty during the day when everybody's at work, right? So. I think needs to be some study done to see, because that might be some outreach to builders. You just might have an institutional knowledge of like, do they come to the table with, 2.5 units per or whatever, just because we know that's what we need out here? Or are they always asking to reduce it and now they're gonna be happy? I don't know the answer to that, but.
I don't know of a development that has been approved within the last 6 years that has asked for reduced parking here in Sherwood. They either meet it or exceed.
the
It might not be that person.
Planet Fitness project was here.
Sierra Plaza.
Uh,
And they were-
That's
they were
it's
taking-
like right on the cusp.
Yeah, they were taking advantage of existing code language that allows shared parking.
Mhm.
And we denied that. We didn't deny that on parking grounds. We denied it on the lot size interpretation.
Right.
While you're going through the lawsuit, there's nothing that says you can't, every time you talk to a developer, say. This is what you're required, this is what our code based on years of blah, blah, blah would. Prior code or current code.
And this
Like,
is
you
what
can
the city
provide both.
prefers.
Yeah. right.
Yeah,
You can
we
do that.
we definitely
definitely have
do
a
that.
conversation with developers,
But
like
it-
we tell them
Right.
If
your
you wanna be
vision. If you
successful.
want to,
Yes.
Yeah.
And typically, that's what they know what number of parking spaces they need
Sure.
for this commercial development to succeed.
And actually, council has asked us, I think they'll stay on us about it. They've actually asked us to basically draft preferred parking standards.
That's a great idea.
Yes.
And basically give that out at the same time. And I think where council's going with it, council's already been in the weeds a little bit on this. And the thought was, if we know that that's actually not being provided, the city will take a really close look at managing on-street parking through our own, enforcement mechanism.
I would go further and say like have preloaded like projects that are problematic and say like developer, if you go take a look at XYZ, we know they don't have enough parking. Go observe those during peak hours.
Yeah.
See how screwed up it is, don't do that.
Yeah, I think that type of communication, if we don't win the lawsuit, we have to codify all this. That type of a handout or something or communication is going to be critical, so.
So in a worst case scenario with HB 2001, I could tear down my house, build a quadplex and have no parking requirements.
It's always glass half empty.
Yes.
Yes.
But the answer
Yeah.
is yes. That's scary. Yeah, that's scary.
Yes.
Which is the one size fits all. It makes sense. In Portland, seems to be not
And,
quite as desirable here.
and based on the black line, I could do the same thing, which right now in my cul-de-sac, we don't have enough parking for the
Yeah.
people that, because the guys that are at the end of the cul-de-sac,
You can't park.
because they may or may not be parking nose in at the end of the driveway across 4 parking lots or 4 driveways, because
So that means like trailers and everything too, or boats and stuff like that, so
Those are.
it's all gonna have to go to.
well, they're not allowed on the streets. Trailers and park, trailers and boats.
Contact your HOA.
Yeah,
Well-
that's on the HO.
All down Langer, you go down there, cause I live on that side too, and that, I mean, everybody's parking their trucks and trailers and
On
boats.
Century,
Yeah.
Century or Langer,
On
Century, yeah. Yeah.
I thought they were only allowed like 3 days or something.
Like 72 hours on street and then they. have-
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, you can, the police department enforces parking violations, like, and we do enforce it, I get complaints.
It's
we-
complaint driven,
It's
though, it's not-
complaint, yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, what they'll do, I think it's 5 days. I don't know if it's different for boats or RVs, but for vehicles, it's. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a little cumbersome, but they gotta go out, mark it, give, put notice. I think it's
If they're
5 days.
attached to a vehicle, then there's different rules, I think, but if.
Yeah, but I think we do respond. So if you're concerned, and if you're not gonna respond, so let us know. We can.
I was just thinking the flip side of this, once we lose car parking, it's just gonna add
Street, yeah.
to all of that as well.
People are gonna stop on cars.
Well-
We're all.
Not
gonna ride-
both.
We're all gonna ride the bus to Hubbard 5 miles outside of Oak.
All right.
I'm working on my personal drone right now, so I fly everywhere.
So my contact info is there, just in case anyone wants to have other questions, they can feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks, Joy.
Oh, you're welcome. Look at that, it's not even midnight.
Are you not part of, you're not part of the next one?
I am.
Yes,
I am.
You gotta screen share.
I thought I did.
Go to Zoom. Zoom at the bottom.
Oh, yeah, so now it's like.
The other, there's another one. this
Yeah,
one.
hold on 1 second.
Well, there,
Screen share.
there you go.
Share.
All these technical stuff.
All right. Food cart pod. So why are we here tonight to talk about food cart pods? Well, we get a lot of questions, I'm sure, about food cart pods and if we allow them or not. And we've received these questions more and more over the past several years. And so last fall, council asked staff to come to a work session to learn more about how we address food cart pod requests or just food carts in general in Sherwood. And then we had that conversation and then council requested staff to look into where food carts could be located in Sherwood. So we came back in May with some zoning options for food cart pods, and we'll talk about food cart pods here in a minute. Then council directed staff to develop some draft code language in regards to zoning. And so in May, we went, just a couple months ago, we went to city council, we brought 2 options. General commercial or retail commercial or both. And that included the retail commercial down here in Old Town as well. And council said, hey, let's draft code for both zones. And so what we heard from council is that food cart pods should be located both in the general and retail commercial districts, but not on city-owned property. If located in Old Town, so we have built-in some design elements. So the food pavilion, which is the main structure on the site, would blend into the Old Town design standards that we have currently. Council really talked about food cart being a destination, and so we wanted to create these pod sites. And those pod sites, should include 5 or more food carts. And once again, they wanted to see a permanent like dining pavilion and permanent restroom facilities. And that these types of applications would actually come to planning commission as a type 4 review, but then also we would apply the conditional use permit standards as well.
So it's a little bit unusual than the typical, because like a conditional use would be heard by a hearings
Hearings officer.
officer. So they're gonna get bumped up to a type 4.
And so we kind of, we went out to different communities looking at, best practices for food cart pods. And you see here, this is Happy Valleys, and then this is the new Hillsborough site location. So we really modeled these standards after some good designs for food cart pods in other jurisdictions. So council reviewed the draft code language that was in your packet just last month. And they had asked for this draft code language to be placed on your work plan for review and recommendation for possible adoption. Council really didn't have a lot of questions or concerns about the draft development code language. We added some more language that they asked for, like they didn't want food cart pods to be located on city property. So we added that language. But they did have one question, and they had a question, about requiring certain colors for food carts on site. And then we had this discussion on what should be required? Should we regulate the paint colors on these carts, or is it just the overall signage that you don't want to be seen from the public right of way? Or maybe it's both. So that's one question. I think that was the only kind of sticking question that they had for planning commission to chew on. So we had the draft language. So we're here tonight just to address, are there any red flags? If you have any input about, paint colors for food carts on sites or signage on the cart.
Can you go back to slide 5?
Yes.
So when I was talking to one of the counselors that Tuesday night, and then Commissioner Vance, I was envisioning something similar to what you're showing there, except that I'm not sure if the food cart facing that way. What I see is when you drive by, it's like a residential design standards or industrial design standards, that from the street, there is fencing that would be for security, landscaping that would make it appealing, and then orientation rules that would not put the garbage cans and the waste of the back of because a lot of times the back of the pod or the cart is the least appealing. We touched on the colors, which seems, I saw someplace in here. So I don't know if our code as written would get fencing and landscaping and a buffering to that.
You know, as far as screening.
Screening, yeah. I think there needs to be screening, especially if it is adjacent to residential.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah, I saw the screening, but it didn't look, or the buffering, it was only like 5 or 10 feet, so. It seems like the pavilion has an opportunity to have a lot of noise generation, so. And then the color thing, I think in Old Town, the earth tones.
Which I think we added
Not for the pavilion or for the individual food carts.
so right now would be for the pavilion. And not for the,
Because food carts, I'm thinking, if you have your food cart, you have your branding and stuff like that, and being prescriptive may limit. Someone would say, well, I'm not gonna change my brand, and
That's what was discussed at the council.
Right, and that's where I'm saying, they can have a sign the same size as we allow on any business, which is 2 foot by 3 foot, you know, so my vision is that that white one. The food part, what if that became Voodoo Donuts? And bright pink, is that? It would be, we would know what it was, but if there were landscaping all along the frontage. I don't care what it looks like inside, when someone walks inside, everything facing the inner courtyard could be. Dynamically painted, but I think from the street, it has to have a curb appeal, and if that's the pavilion is. The pavilion is the front straighting facing. But then you don't know that it's a food cart, how do you get the carts in and out?
So I,
Basically, I don't have a good answer, I just,
well, landscape and screening should block that pink, you know, in that case, that'd be the idea, because it would be, you know, sort of a bit out of sync with what's going on in Old Town in particular. And so if we had that, you know, because once you're on the inside, it's colorful and it's vibrant, and everyone has their different stuff going on, but it's gonna be just, you know, it's only gonna impact the end carts, really, for the most part. So that'd be simple landscaping, seems like would solve for that.
One of the examples, went up to Olympia, and Olympia, Washington, they have basically something like the Happy Valley set up here, where they have permanent fixtures that are outlined on the side, and vendors come in to this rented space, more or less. And it's not a cart per se, but it's a established facility. And they also house their farmers market inside of the larger.
It's a building.
It's a building,
Yeah.
a communal building that has the tenants move
Yeah.
around inside. So they had like an ice cream shop, they had a local butcher, for example, and things like that. And on the outside, you had smaller pods that were like, hey, we're the pop-up for this one, so and so, and you can come in. But parking was an issue, and they had to have a larger kind of parking lot to the side. I don't see, for example, here on Happy Valley, where they're gonna be parking for, you know, residents that want to come up and visit, maybe on the side of the street, maybe there's something right there, but something else, while I was living in El Cerrito down in California, they would have pop-ups that would shut down portions of streets, similar to what we do for rolling. And that would be like an every other Tuesday type of situation, primarily during the summer. But have we, and I like the permanent structure idea, but what other options have been discussed, such as more of a permanent facility and or temporary?
Temporary, when you refer to reminds me, Hillsborough does their thing Tuesday nights as well, where they shut down the streets and all the pop-up vendors show up and all that good stuff, so. Yeah, like the parking for Happy Valley is much like the one I think in Troutdale, it's all
It is.
south of that, you parking right down.
Right down here. It's actually owned by the
Same, but
same,
they look identical.
by the same family.
Yeah, but I definitely, I mean, I just was at the farmer's market in Hillsborough over the weekend, and I drove through this. And this particular, the one in Hillsborough, doesn't have on-site parking, so everyone was parking on the street. Because it's front's baseline, so, you know.
Happy Valley is similar to the yard too in Salem, if anybody's been there, but so it's all gated off. They have their big giant gates. So really all you see as soon as you go through the gates is the pavilion. You don't even see the carts on either side until you get in.
that from the street side then is what you're
From
saying?
parking and street side. And I think Happy Valley, because it kind of comes down into a dip. So you can't really see it from the street at all. You see the roof mostly, but even from parking, once you're in the lot, all you see is the big fences with the signage. Parking is a problem.
Necessary for something like a Happy Valley, and do we have capacity in our?
Let's see, Happy Valley, here we go.
Look at her.
Was 0.93 acres, and it holds around 21 carts. And the building is a little over 3,000 square feet. And I just want to say too, that inside the Happy Valley Pavilion, you do have like
That's really
3 little pop-ups, like a bakery and an ice cream place. Yeah, and their beer and wine sales are also inside.
So that's, yeah. Allows for various vendors to come in and.
And their furnishings are movable but huge also, so you can have
Yes.
events inside of.
Yes, you can rent,
as
you
well.
can rent that space out from them too.
So we're gonna say vehicles, right? So is there a requirement that they be movable and that they're not becoming fixtures? Right? So they're gonna say the mobile vendors have to be movable.
Yes,
Mhm.
And so the CU would say you get 5 food carts on this site, right?
mhm.
And they can swap out without theoretically, I know you haven't written the reg yet, but they can swap out. But I feel a little bit like if you want a robust, successful food cart pod, regulating the colors of the food truck itself might be very difficult because the barbecue place didn't do great here, so we're gonna take it out. We got somebody else who wants to come in, except they gotta paint their truck to meet or to meet Sherwood standards. So I feel like there's a lot of good to be had with regulating the colors of the pavilion and things, but I do think a better way to not have a junkie, for lack of a better word, food cart pod is really to take a look at restrictions on extra signage beyond what is written on the truck.
Mhm, mhm.
And so, and how about the screening on the street?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all that stuff is great, but once you're inside, I mean, there's been a lot of creative stuff done with signage, especially if you get more than 5, so you start getting 10. And they're like, okay, I want you to see me, so I'm gonna also stick, a board on the roof. And I'm gonna also have it splayed on the vehicle, and I'm also gonna put a snipe sign, so I think really being tight. about that stuff.
On the cart as well.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that,
I think I think we have something about no roof, no.
Yeah.
I can't remember everything.
There was anything that's roof mounted, well, no, it was pavilion, never mind.
Yeah, so I think maybe the sign section could be
A little bit more robust.
Yeah.
I think we'll do lots of crazy stuff.
But for like menus and whatnot,
Banners,
yeah,
those can be,
yeah,
Use of lights might be a thing to think about
Yeah.
too,
yeah.
neon and all that stuff.
and flashy,
Yeah,
mhm.
especially in a neighborhood,
So-
or adjacent to a neighborhood.
music.
What I didn't see was anything about pest control. I saw generation of excessive noise and litter, but what are the, and like there's the environmental impacts, there's something else called out, but I don't see that they have to pay like a fair share of rodent control and or whatnot. That's gonna be eventually coming on, like who's gonna clean up the site after, a day?
Wouldn't that be covered under the who regulates regular restaurants and everything? Do they regulate food carts?
Washington County.
Yeah, Washington County Health Authority.
But they're not gonna police. I mean, how is it that, if we start getting rats or whatnot that congregate at a pavilion?
And so that would be a code enforcement issue.
Yeah, be nuisance.
That
We
would
could,
be
we could
nuisance.
probably have, so.
Nuisance code in regards to vermin.
Yeah, so we could probably have our own code compliance officer enforce that. Yeah.
And then what about like insects with bees and hornets and whatnot that congregate there, somebody gets stung, is that who's
That's on
allowed?
private property.
Okay.
It would be up to.
Well, you would hope that whoever is managing that site
Mhm.
would be on top of it in regards to making sure that things get disposed of accordingly and.
So it would be operated like Happy Valley as a single individual family, let's just say, or a corporation or something like that would come in, purchase the site. And then,
Put in the improvements.
okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then they lease out
They would
the
lease out.
pods
That makes sense.
typically,
And
that's
then
how,
they have
the-
CCNRs or
yeah, maintenance
not
responsibility.
whatever
Lease agreements.
lease agreements
Mhm.
that would be.
That would have unbundled parking.
Together, that your work?
What was that?
Go back one page. Did you put that together? Is that yours?
Yes.
I was gonna say, you got plum bathrooms, heated cover area, plum bathrooms, and world's tallest fork.
Yeah. With me.
Thank you for noticing that. I noticed it too.
I would do better than that. We have the world's time.
Yeah,
Big Bowman or
let us,
something.
let us know.
Barrow.
That was done by the city.
Bike parking, I think that, I don't know what the regs would dovetail into what this use is and requirements, but, you know, we want folks to come from locally to drive down
Yeah.
to Old Town, or to bike to Old Town and go to food court, so I think having a requirement for bike, on-site bike parking would be great.
I think
Yeah,
it's
we have it.
0.5
Point
per
five
food
per-
cart,
is
but I
it
don't think that, I mean,
okay.
if you have 5
I think it was
Page
0.5 per
25, yeah, per space.
per food
Yeah.
cart.
Per food cart,
So if you
yeah.
have 5 food carts, I mean, you're
So.
2.5
page
bikes
25.
and you're done. I think that there's,
One person.
We can probably bump, yeah, we can bump it up.
Bump it up.
well, if we're gonna be doing a transit oriented approach here, that we should definitely have.
One and done.
Well, but it also, I mean, like, if the lot was right there, that makes a lot of sense, but it ends up being on one of the far corners of Sherwood where they do this.
Electric bikes.
That's what I got outside. Yeah, it's certainly, I'm able to get around town real quick, but. That means you also have to have not just a bike space, you have to have the bollards and the things to attack motorbikes too.
So and if your setbacks are your landscaping and they have bollards to keep people out, you just turn them into bike rack or bike security place.
Right. Or encourage the vertical parking of bikes. There's many restaurants and whatnot that have that, and
And I just want to say, since this is a conditional use permit, you do have a lot more discretion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we do expect and anticipate, you know, part of the challenge, I think, with this code and what we talked with city council about was the size. And that was kind of a lot of the discussion. And we really wanted, Erica mentioned it up front, is that we wanted this to be a destination. And so the examples that we have are, they're big food carts. They have a presence, you know, we didn't want, or council didn't want these one-off food carts in a random parking lot. It's not what they wanted. So, forgot where I was going with that. What was the topic? Sorry.
I was gonna say,
Destination.
the destination well screens with
Yeah.
bicycle parking
Yeah, I
and.
forgot what the point was. Sorry.
There you go.
that we can condition it to whatever we.
Thank you. Yes. So we anticipate, you know, we tried to write the code so that it was, you know, it would fit within Old Town. These are pretty small lots. And so the canopy is 1,000 square feet, which we think would probably fit in one of these pods. But we could get a CUP for a really small pod that's really tight. We could get a pretty big one as well. And so the code is not going to address everything. And we expect you guys as planning commissioners to kind of weigh in at that time and really, hopefully really elevate the quality. I mean, that's what I would hope, is that if they're not proposing something that really gets it right in your guys' eyes or the city's eyes, bring it up through that hearing process.
So the smallest food cart pod was in Portland. And it was on a lot about 5,000 square feet. They fit in 5 carts, and then they also fit in a pretty large building area. On that site.
They have a cute little deck.
See, yeah, they have a deck out front, so they don't have landscaping out front. They just have this deck that kind of overlooks the sidewalk, so people can see things as they travel on the sidewalk.
Also, put in a plug to say if it's being built on a parcel that doesn't have sidewalks built to city standards, then
Yes,
they trigger, you know, if it would trigger.
yes,
Yeah, I mean, based on the.
We've struggled with that a whole bunch in the, you know, they're technically vehicles, and they had a weird ITE rate and it didn't trigger. So we
Yeah.
just.
yeah, for the cost, yeah, that's, I'll take a look at that.
Proportionality.
Yeah, we failed it every time, but it's important. You know, if you wanna have this destination and you have like a, you know, 7-foot curb height.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We've talked with engineering about this a little bit, but it's the point is we should talk with them about SDCs,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
When we don't have we gotta have the utilities down, everything's gonna be permanent, water, sewer, all that's permanent, but the transportation is a little unique, so.
I mean, I bet most of these sites are probably already have the infrastructure there, but on the random one that.
Don't have this so same orders. restrained thing.
Yes, yep, the separator.
Yeah.
But Erica, you mentioned that you've gotten feelers or at least inquiries about it. Have you had any developers ask you about potential locations?
Quite frequently.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
mean, I mean, I received a call today asking, where's this stamp, where are we in regards to our regulations? And I said, well, we're actually hearing it in front of, we're doing a work session in front of planning commission tonight. And I said, expect something like within 2 months, probably, as far as hearing notices and our webpage update for the project, and then probably 3 to 4 months, we'll have something adopted.
Movie theater site and that big old parking that's happening.
Wouldn't that be
Wouldn't that be
fun?
nice?
That's
What
like.
was that?
Yeah. Movie theater spot. Oh, yeah.
Would that be
Really great
sweet?
spot.
Bugging me every single day. Let's figure something else out for it.
We
so.
would, I think, we sure would. I think you made the comment one time, landed of the strip malls, or the strip centers. I think we would love for, we would love for a food cart pod. Hopefully more than one, but a food cart pod to reinvigorate some of the older shopping centers.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
It's a good memory. That's when I moved here 27 years ago.
Yeah.
My barber goes, oh, the land of strip malls
Yeah,
and antique stores. He did say that.
Sherwood Plaza where the Ross is, there's no trees in there. It's just a big old thing of parking. It'd be great to sort of spruce those up a little bit.
And Erica got it. The Sherwood spoon. World's tallest.
Solid spoon.
Sure.
1 foot bigger than Fairview Street.
All right.
Can I just tell you guys how much it costs? Just so you know, $250,000.
It was an art installation.
It was the food cart pot in Fairview was the URA, the Fairview Urban Renewal Agency in partnership with the private developer. So yeah, the URA paid for that fork, $250,000.
Eric and I have history with Fairview.
So does Eric.
Yeah, that's right. I am there too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Would there be any
Sure.
limitations on like liquor licenses and whatnot?
So LCC, regulates liquor licenses,
Mhm.
and so.
Yeah, so we don't even
Okay,
identify it in the code or anything.
so it could be like a beer garden that has.
Yeah.
So I thought-
Yeah.
And many of those, the examples were that, as far as they had a alcohol
like,
component.
The whole beer garden, bocce ball, thing like that,
Yeah.
like a whole.
So is there any of these that are gonna be adjacent? We don't know where they're going, but adjacent to residential food lots? Because as you said that, I thought
Yeah, there's probably like noise ordinance of
noise ordinance or hours.
And
Yep.
setbacks.
And setbacks, and the CUP does kind of address some of that stuff, but. What I also heard from you tonight is to look at, fencing standards, maybe landscaping and additional buffers. So I'm gonna go back and take a look at this code language, budget. Where I can, and then bring it back for one more work session.
Yeah, and
Um,
where it's in a commercial area, I want freedom for them to be able to do something robust and big, but where it's,
Next to a residential.
we want to be very protective of the neighbors.
Yeah, and that's where the CUP really comes in as well.
But yeah, make sure it's clearly defined.
Bike parking.
I think you have it.
As well.
well, increased bike parking.
Yeah.
It's there, but I think it should be.
Yeah, I think, 0.5 for, take a little light.
Like mobile food units are approved through special permit application. I'm sorry, what is that? Like. It's the second exemption.
So
Is that how like the thing gets it out sometimes? Like the Hawaiian Ice thing or the. Yes. So what is, like, is that just a day, what is that, a day use permit or?
That's a special, the mobile food units and other mobile vending units are operated as part of an approved special permit application. So we have what we call SPA, a special permit application, and it's used for like the Robin Hood Festival. And other like special
Mhm.
events. you know, on private property or in the public right of way.
Okay, because that was one of my questions, it's like high school football games, Dutch Brothers does their trailer. And this would, I don't want to impact something like that that's already happening.
Yeah, those would be.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that was your question. Kind of,
Can you 5 of those and 5?
yeah, that would be okay. I think what that.
Yes.
What,
If it's temporary.
yeah, if it's temporary. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so we don't, all the special events that happen in Sherwood, basically you can have all the food stuff there
Sure.
as long as it goes away. That's all it's saying is that
Okay.
you don't need to go through this process.
And they're all tied to like a time period.
Yes, through the special event.
Through the special permit application.
Right, that Tuesday night special, they would have a special permit or something like that, if.
And that's what you mentioned earlier about in El Cerrito where they do the every Tuesday. So that planning department actually doesn't issue those. It's done through community services who oversees parks and senior center. And so they issue those permits. And so that would be the type of event that you're talking about. And this code would not apply.
Is there anything in there about pet usage, like pet friendly areas or
I don't think we.
the difference between indoor space versus outdoor seating space and doggy bags?
I think it'd probably be up to the operator whether they want to allow.
Right.
That's sort of to make the code for restaurant.
I don't think we. I don't think we
Because you
addressed
can't
it.
have one, you
I
can't have.
don't know. That's a good one. We can look into.
Right.
We can look at that. So
And didn't there used to be a rule that where food was served, you could not have pets unless they were service animals?
Yeah, I think that's still the case.
yeah, we're getting that.
Yeah,
Walls too, right?
Yeah.
You can have them at a picnic table outside.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can look into it, get back to you, but I think a lot of the pods now do allow dogs, right? I know Beaverton does. It looks like
Yeah, I don't think we've written anything on it, so we'll have to look in regards to what other jurisdictions are, if they've even identified it, or if it's.
And I cannot remember seeing it like identified in any other codes. I think it's just property, it's just up to the property management company, like in health code.
That's what I was more wondering, like the health code as far as, do they have to provide, a station for doggy bags and stuff like that? Trash receptacles that don't stink.
Best management practices.
Anything else?
Do they have to have like an annual report that the city would have to review in terms of, I'm just thinking out loud in terms of like a mitigation monitoring program, like if they have a site that says, hey, we had this many leaks that we cleaned up from our vendor, or no, okay.
we can enforce the conditions, like if you guys condition them to do
Right.
something that, where there's rodents, I mean. We can address just about anything unless it's like not within our purview of like the food safety or something, totally not within our purview, fine, but. Nuisance issues, all that sort of stuff, hours of operation, if they're exceeding that, everything's enforceable through our code or through code compliance, so, yeah.
Just from lessons learned, you might want to just check. I think you've got stuff in there about awnings and stuff, but
Yeah,
how much they can scab on to the food truck.
Yep.
Before it's too much, because that's been a really big issue at a lot of places. So, yeah.
Thank you for the presentations.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Any comments?
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Consider us adjourned.
Towards the movie theater.